There are things you were never meant to know, stories so dangerous, so earth-shattering, that they were buried beneath the weight of history itself, not erased, just hidden. And now, they are resurfacing. What if everything you believe is a lie? What if history as you know it was rewritten, restructured, reshaped to keep you blind? What if the truth was never lost, just locked away, waiting for someone to find it? Ancient civilizations spoke of beings that descended from the sky, creatures of immense power, knowledge beyond human comprehension. They were worshipped as gods, feared as rulers, and remembered as the architects of mankind itself. But the oldest records don't call them gods. They call them something else. The Anunnaki. They did not emerge from myth, nor were they born from human imagination. They walked among us, shaped our civilizations, whispered into the ears of kings, and vanished into the shadows of time. Or so we were led to believe. But what if they never left? What if even now they are here, watching, waiting, manipulating events from behind the curtain of reality itself? Why does every ancient civilization, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians, the Mayans to the Dogon tribes, speak of sky gods, celestial rulers, and visitors from the heavens? Why do their stories align despite being separated by oceans, by time, by history itself? Either it is all coincidence, or it is the greatest cover-up mankind has ever known. For centuries, secret societies, ancient orders, and forbidden texts have hinted at an unspoken truth, a truth so vast, so incomprehensible, that it could change the course of history forever. Were we created for a purpose? Were we merely tools in a plan older than time itself? Or are we something far more sinister, an experiment abandoned, a mistake left to spiral out of control? And the most terrifying question of all, what happens when they return? Tonight we open the forbidden doors. But be warned once you see the truth, there is no turning back. Before the pyramids, before the Great Wall, before even the first word was written in stone, there was a city lost in time. A place so ancient, so advanced, that history itself struggles to explain its origins. The birthplace of civilization, the land of kings and gods, the forgotten realm of Sumer. They were the first to write, the first to build cities, the first to create laws, mathematics, and astronomy. But how? How did a civilization, appearing seemingly out of nowhere, possess knowledge that should have taken thousands of years to develop? Who taught them? The answer lies in the oldest records ever discovered. In crumbling clay tablets buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, the Sumerians left behind stories. Not myths, not legends, but history. And in those writings, one name appears again and again: the Anunnaki. According to the Sumerians, mankind did not rise naturally. It was created, crafted, engineered by beings who descended from the sky. They were not spirits. They were not gods in the way we understand them today. They were rulers, flesh and blood, walking among men, and the Sumerians did not worship them. They served them. But these beings did not merely watch from the heavens. They walked among men, choosing kings, dictating laws, and shaping the destiny of the world. The records speak of an era where knowledge was handed down, where secrets of the stars, medicine, and advanced architecture were gifts not from human ingenuity, but from something far greater. Their writings do not describe mystical beings or distant deities. They speak of kings who governed the earth, of beings who assigned dominion over lands, who controlled knowledge, power, and resources, and most disturbingly, who decided the fate of mankind itself. But why? Why intervene? Why shape civilization? Why grant intelligence and structure to a species that should have remained primitive? One story may hold the answer: the Atrahasis poem, a text so ancient, so unsettling, that it was almost lost to history. It tells of a time before humans, when the Anunnaki ruled alone. But there was a problem, a conflict. a crisis so great that it threatened their very existence. The lesser gods, the Igigi, were tired. They labored, they toiled, they suffered, and then they revolted. The burden of maintaining the earth had become too great. They laid down their tools, they refused to work, and they turned against their rulers. And so, a decision was made. A new race would be created, a species strong enough to work, intelligent enough to obey, and expendable enough to be replaced if necessary. Humanity was born, not as children of gods, not as a miracle of evolution, but as workers, as slaves. The Enuma Elish, the ancient Babylonian creation story, speaks of a time before man, a time when the earth was not yet shaped, when chaos reigned and the heavens waged war, a battle not between gods, but between rulers, and when the dust settled, a new order emerged. The Anunnaki had arrived. But who were they? Where did they come from? What did they want? And more importantly, what did they fear? Because hidden within these ancient texts is a disturbing truth. A truth that suggests the Anunnaki's arrival was not an accident, not an act of curiosity, but something far more deliberate, something far more dangerous. They called them gods. But were they? Or were they something else, something far more dangerous, far more powerful than anything we could ever imagine? The Sumerians did not describe the Anunnaki as distant deities, unreachable and invisible. They were here, walking among men, ruling over them, dictating the rise and fall of civilizations with nothing more than their will. They were kings, warriors, engineers, and something else, something not of this world. The ancient tablets reveal a disturbing truth. The Anunnaki did not come to Earth as creators, they came as conquerors. In the Enuma Elish, it is written that before the Earth was shaped, there was a war among the stars, a war between powerful factions of celestial rulers, each seeking control over something that would change the fate of the universe itself. And when the dust settled, one group emerged victorious. They were not the first gods. They were simply the last ones standing. But what were they looking for? What was so valuable that an entire war was waged across the heavens to claim it? The Sumerians provide the answer. The answer is us. We were not created out of kindness. We were not given life as a gift. Humanity was forged for one reason and one reason alone: to serve, to build, to mine, to obey. The gods did not shape the world for mankind. They shaped mankind for the world, a species designed for labor, a race engineered to toil beneath the rule of its celestial masters. But something went wrong. The first humans were powerful, too powerful. The gods gave them strength, intelligence, endurance, but they also gave them something else: free will. And the moment mankind realized its own strength, the balance was broken. There are stories, whispers of a time when humans defied their masters, when they fought back, when they dared to stand against the ones who had created them, and the consequences were devastating. The rulers of the heavens decided mankind could not be trusted. The Great Flood was not a punishment, it was a reset, a way to wipe the slate clean and start over, a way to make sure humans would never challenge the gods again. But if we were so dangerous, if we were so unpredictable, why allow us to survive at all? Because some among them did not agree. Not all of the gods believed mankind should be destroyed. Some wanted to help, to guide, to protect. And so, a secret war began, a war hidden in myth and legend, a war fought not on the battlefield, but in bloodlines, in forbidden knowledge, in the shadows of history itself. The Anunnaki did not leave because they were done with us. They left because they had to, because their war was not over, because something or someone was coming. But the real question isn't where they went. The real question is, what if they never left? For centuries, astronomers have mapped the heavens, tracing the orbits of planets, cataloging distant stars, and unlocking the secrets of the cosmos. But hidden in the vast darkness of space, there is something that should not exist. A celestial body so elusive, so terrifying in its implications, that even modern science hesitates to speak its name: Nibiru. It is said to be the missing planet, the rogue world that defies the known order of our solar system. A massive celestial body that, according to some, lurks in the farthest reaches of space, beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, where the sun's light barely touches. But its existence was never meant to be a mystery. The Sumerians, they already knew. In the oldest cuneiform tablets ever discovered, there is mention of a planet of the crossing Nibiru, a world whose orbit is so vast that it takes thousands of years to complete a single revolution around the sun. A world that, when it returns, does not come alone. Zecharia Sitchin, a man ridiculed by the scientific community, claimed he had uncovered something shocking. In his interpretation of ancient Sumerian texts, he revealed a forgotten cosmic time lineon that suggests that Earth has been visited, not once, but many times, by entities that descend with the coming of Nibiru. And if he was right, then the very origins of humanity are tied not to evolution, but to intervention. If Nibiru exists, why can't we see it? Why is there no direct evidence? The answer is far more chilling than you think. In 1983, NASA's IRAS telescope detected something unusual, an unidentified celestial object in deep space, emitting heat yet invisible to normal telescopes. Anomalies in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune had already suggested that something massive was out there, pulling on the planets, distorting their paths. Scientists speculated about a large hidden planet, but then the research went silent. The reports vanished. The official statements changed. The world moved on. But some didn't forget. Decades later, in 2016, astronomers from Caltech reignited the mystery. They proposed the existence of Planet 9, a massive unseen world affecting the orbits of smaller celestial bodies in the Kuiper Belt. They weren't looking for Nibiru, and yet their calculations led them to the same unsettling conclusion. Something was out there, something big, something moving in ways we do not understand. But why the secrecy? If a planet exists, why not confirm it? What are they hiding? Some believe Nibiru is more than just a wandering planet. Some believe it is an engineered world, an ancient ship, a cosmic fortress, the throne of the gods who once ruled over Earth. And when it crosses paths with our world, history changes. Empires fall, civilizations collapse, and something awakens. What if the cycles of destruction in our past weren't natural disasters? What if they were resets? What if the return of Nibiru isn't just an astronomical event, but a signal, a call? And if that's true, who is answering? A prophecy or a warning? For centuries, whispers of a cataclysmic event have echoed through the ancient world. A cycle of destruction, a force so unstoppable, so devastating, that civilizations have risen and fallen in its wake. What if the warnings left behind by our ancestors were never myths? What if they were memories? The Sumerians recorded it, the Mayans tracked it, the Egyptians feared it, and today modern science is struggling to explain it. Every few thousand years, something shifts, patterns emerge. Extinctions, great floods, lost civilization sevenths that should have no connection, yet they do. They follow a rhythm, an unseen countdown, and at the center of it all is Nibiru. If Nibiru is real, then its return is not just another cosmic occurrence. It is an event written into the foundation of history itself. And according to some theories, its approach may already be happening. In recent years, astronomers have observed strange anomalies, unusual planetary tilts, shifts in Earth's magnetic field, and a rise in unexplained solar activity. Could this be the gravitational pull of an unseen force? Some believe it is. And if that's true, then everything we know is about to change. But there is something even more disturbing. In ancient texts, the return of Nibiru is not just about planetary chaos. It is about something far greater, something that comes with it. Zecharia Sitchin believed that the Anunnaki were not gods, but advanced beings visitors from Nibiru. He claimed that the timeline of human history has been manipulated, rewritten to erase the presence of these celestial rulers. But the texts remain, the warnings remain, and the message is clear. When Nibiru returns, so do they. But are they coming back as saviors, or as rulers reclaiming what was once theirs? Ancient myths from cultures all over the world tell the same story. The gods left, promising to return. The Hopi speak of the star beings who will come again when the time is right. The Dogon people of Africa speak of the Namo, celestial travelers who will one day descend once more. The book of Revelation speaks of the heavens opening, of a great arrival that will shake the foundations of the earth. What if these were not just religious visions? What if they were warnings? What if they were messages from those who lived through the last arrival? If Nibiru is approaching, then so is something else. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something we are not prepared for. The question is not if they will return. The question is, will we recognize them when they do? Hidden within the very essence of who we are is a mystery. A secret encoded in every cell of our bodies. A code so precise, so deliberate, that it defies everything we understand about evolution. Science tells us that DNA is the blueprint of life, that our genetic code is a product of millions of years of random mutations and survival of the fittest. But what if that's not true? What if something or someone tampered with it? In 1973, Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of the DNA structure, proposed a radical idea. He suggested that life on Earth may have been seeded deliberately by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, a concept known as directed panspermia. It was dismissed as speculation. But modern genetics is uncovering something far stranger. There is something unusual about human DNA, something that separates us from every other species on the planet. A sudden, inexplicable jump in cognitive ability, intelligence, and self-awareness. Something that happened between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. Evolution should not work like this. No other species has undergone such a rapid transformation. So what changed? Deep within our genome, scientists have found anomalies. Our second chromosome, chromosome 2, is fused, something that is almost never seen in nature. A perfect, precise fusion, as if someone took two separate strands and welded them together. Some researchers believe this was the key moment that created Homo sapiens, the version of humanity we are today. But natural fusion doesn't work this way. It's too clean, too perfect, almost as if it was engineered. And then there's the 98% of our DNA that scientists once called junk, a vast portion of our genetic code that seems to serve no function, or at least no function we understand. But what if it's not junk? What if it's a message, a signature, a locked frequency waiting to be activated? Ancient Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki as creators of mankind. They didn't just influence civilization, they built us. The Atrahasis poem speaks of a moment when the gods mixed their own essence with primitive hominids, a genetic modification that gave rise to the first true humans. But why? Why would an advanced race of beings alter the DNA of an existing species? What was their goal? To create slaves? To create soldiers? Or something far more dangerous? There is a reason why every civilization, every ancient text, every forgotten myth speaks of forbidden knowledge, the tree of knowledge in the Bible, the sacred texts of the Vedas, the emerald tablets of Thoth, all warning that the moment mankind gained intelligence, something changed, something irreversible. But what if intelligence wasn't the problem? What if the real danger was something else, something hidden deep within us, locked away, waiting to be unlocked? Could it be possible that our creators feared what we might become? If humanity was designed, then what was the original plan? Were we meant to be this intelligent, this rebellious, or did something go terribly wrong? Every ancient civilization tells the same story of gods who walked the earth, who shaped mankind, and who, for reasons unknown, eventually left. But they didn't just leave, they erased. They reset. They ensured that whatever had happened before would never be remembered. But why? What were they afraid of? There is a theory that shakes the foundation of everything we believe about ourselves. The idea that we were not the first version of humanity, that before us there was something else. A version of mankind that was too powerful, too intelligent, too dangerous. In the ancient Sumerian texts, there is mention of the first humans beings known as the Adamu. They were different from us. Longer lifespans, higher intelligence, a direct link to the divine. But they became uncontrollable. They began questioning, they began learning, and they began resisting. The gods had created a workforce, but instead, they had created something else, something unpredictable, something they could no longer control. And so, the Great Reset was initiated. The flood myths, the destruction of past civilizations, the erasure of forgotten knowledge, it was not an accident. It was a solution. A final attempt to correct a mistake that had spiraled out of control. But not all the gods agreed. Some saw potential in their creation. Some believed humanity should not be destroyed, but guided, protected. And so, a war broke out, not a war of weapons, but a war of knowledge. A war of hidden bloodlines, of forbidden secrets, of lost civilizations buried beneath the sands of time. The battle for the soul of humanity had begun. What if that battle never ended? What if the reset failed? What if remnants of the first experiment still exist within us? What if that junk DNA isn't junk at all, but a remnant of something ancient? In 2012, a hidden code geneticists made a shocking discovery. What they once called junk DNA wasn't junk at all. It was filled with sequences that seemed to serve no immediate function, but looked eerily like an encrypted message. What if that message isn't random? What if it's a signature? A warning? A key? And what if something or someone is coming back to turn that key? Could this explain the sudden leaps in human intelligence? Could this explain why, across history, secret societies, religious institutions, and even modern governments have sought to control knowledge, to suppress certain discoveries? To eliminate those who get too close to the truth? Because the moment humanity understands what it truly is, the moment we unlock the full potential of our lost genetic heritage, the gods will no longer rule. They will no longer be worshipped. They will no longer be feared. They will be replaced. And maybe that is what they feared all along. There are structures on this planet that should not exist. Buildings so advanced, so precisely engineered, that they defy everything we know about the civilizations that supposedly built them. Historians say these were created by primitive hands using simple tools, ropes, and sheer manpower. But what if that's not true? What if these ancient marvels were not built, but left behind? From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to the Step Pyramids of Mesopotamia, from the lost city of Teotihuacan to the unexplained ruins of Göbekli Tepe's structures, do not belong to the time in which they were built. They follow a design, a pattern, a knowledge that should not have existed in those ancient eras. And yet, they do. How did civilizations separated by vast oceans, who had no contact with each other, build structures with nearly identical architectural principles? Why do so many of these sites align perfectly with the stars? Why do they echo the same celestial patterns, as if following an invisible blueprint that predates human history itself? One answer keeps resurfacing: The Anunnaki. According to ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki did not just create mankind. They designed the world in which we live. They did not just teach humans how to build. They dictated what was to be built. And perhaps more disturbingly, they dictated where. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not just a tomb, it is a mathematical enigma. The coordinates of its location align almost perfectly with the speed of light 299792458 meters per second. How could an ancient civilization, with no knowledge of modern physics, encode such precise information? Teotihuacan, known as the City of the Gods, is laid out with geometric precision, mirroring the positions of planets in our solar system. Its Pyramid of the Sunday is nearly identical in size to the Great Pyramid of Giza. How? Coincidence? Or a signature? And then, there's Göbekli Tepe, a site so ancient that it predates Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years, a site that should not exist. It rewrites everything we know about early civilization. Who built it? Why did they build it? And more importantly, why did they bury it? Could it be that these structures were not built by primitive hands, but were remnants of a lost technology? Could it be that these were not mere temples but something far more functional, more precise, more alien? What if these sites were never meant to be found? But what if these ancient sites were more than just structures? What if they were not built to honor the gods, but to communicate with them? Modern archaeology tells us that the pyramids, ziggurats, and megalithic structures of the past were temples, places of worship, built by civilizations who believed in celestial beings. But the precision of these monuments tells a different story. The alignments, the geometry, the sheer scale, these were not just shrines, they were something more, something with a purpose. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not just an architectural wonder, it is an anomaly. Unlike any other pyramid, it contains no hieroglyphics, no royal inscriptions, no confirmed burial chamber. It is perfectly aligned with true north, more accurately than any modern building. And inside, its king's chamber emits strange electromagnetic energy, something that has baffled researchers for decades. What was its real function? And then there's Teotihuacan. The City of the Gods is not just a name, it is a clue. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sunday, tunnels have been discovered, lined with liquid mercury, a substance the ancients revered as a gateway between worlds. But why? What were they trying to access? Or, who were they trying to reach? Across the world, from the Nazca lines of Peru to the giant megaliths of Baalbek, from the underground tunnels of Derinkuyu to the monolithic statues of Easter Island, one pattern repeats. These places were not just meant to be seen, they were meant to be used. But for what? Could they have been part of an ancient energy grid? A network designed to harness forces beyond our comprehension? Many alternative researchers believe these sites were once connected, channeling energy from the earth itself, an energy we no longer understand. Were these structures part of a lost technology, something that powered entire civilizations, something that could have even been otherworldly? And if that's true, then why was it abandoned? Why was this knowledge lost? Did humanity forget, or was it erased? Because if these places were part of an ancient system, if they were built to connect, transmit, or even control energy, then it raises a terrifying question. Was the Anunnaki's departure a choice or a necessity? And if they left, what were they running from? And then they vanished. For centuries, the Anunnaki walked the earth, shaping empires, controlling knowledge, and ruling as gods. But then they were gone. No war, no warning, no trace, just silence. Their temples turned to ruins, their cities abandoned, their names fading into myth. But civilizations don't just disappear. Rulers don't just walk away from their thrones. Something happened. Something so massive, so catastrophic, that even the gods themselves had no choice but to leave. But what was it? What could force an entire race of celestial beings, masters of genetic engineering, architects of Emperesto, suddenly abandon everything they had built? The oldest records don't give a direct answer, but what they do give is a pattern of destruction, chaos, and fire, a pattern of sudden, violent upheaval. And at the center of it, a lone word keeps appearing: war. But not just any war, a war among the gods. In the lost texts of Mesopotamia, there are whispers of a great conflict tone that tore the heavens apart, a battle so devastating that even the victors were forced to flee. In the Enuma Elish, Marduk rises against Tiamat, waging a cosmic battle for control of the universe. In Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata speaks of divine wars, weapons of unimaginable power, and an age where gods fought each other in the skies. And in the Bible, the book of Revelation describes a great war in heaven, where angels fell, and the earth was shaken to its core. Different cultures, different eras, the same story, the same war. But what if it wasn't just mythology? What if these were fragmented memories of a real eventone so catastrophic that it erased an entire civilization from history? There is evidence, but not where you'd expect. Archaeologists have uncovered strange anomalies, like fields in deserts, where temperatures once soared beyond anything natural, craters with no meteor origins. Entire cities turned to ash in an instant. Scientists struggled to explain them, but the ancients left clues. In the ancient Indian text, the Mahabharata, there is a passage that describes a weapon that burned cities to the ground in seconds. A blast so bright that even the blind could see. A heat so intense that those who survived lost their hair and nails within days. What does that sound like to you? To some, it sounds like nuclear devastation. But if this was thousands of years ago, then who was fighting? And more importantly, what were they fighting over? Some believe it was Earth itself, that factions of the Anunnaki had turned against each other, each seeking ultimate control. Others believe the war was much larger, that Earth was merely one battlefield in a war that spanned the stars. And when the dust settled, when the final battle was lost, those who remained had no choice. They left. But there's one final question that no one dares to ask. Did they leave because they lost, or because they knew that something even worse was coming? The gods did not leave because they wanted to. They left because they had to. Something had changed. The world they had once ruled was no longer theirs to control. The war among them had left scars not just in the heavens, but on Earth itself. And in their final moments here, they made a choice. To erase everything. The evidence is everywhere. Ancient structures buried beneath the sands, entire cities wiped from history, knowledge lost overnight. The Sumerian king list speaks of rulers who lived for thousands of years, until suddenly, they didn't. The records stop. The timeline collapses. The great civilizations of Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and pre-dynastic Egypt gone, as if someone had reset the world. What were they trying to hide? There are whispers in the oldest myths that humanity had discovered something, that before the gods left, mankind had begun to change. The genetic experiment they had started was spiraling beyond their control. What if we had unlocked something we were never meant to? Something buried deep within our DNA? Something that made us like them? Think about it. Why do so many ancient texts speak of forbidden knowledge? Why does the Bible say that Adam and Eve were banished the moment they gained wisdom? Why do Hindu scriptures speak of ages where man was nearly godlike, only to be cast down? Why do Sumerian texts hint that the first humans Adamo were different from us, stronger, wiser, and then suddenly disappeared? What if the greatest secret of all is that we were never meant to evolve? And if that's true, then the Anunnaki didn't leave because of a war. They left because they had lost control. They erased the knowledge. They buried the past. They ensured that whatever had happened before would never happen again. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. They may have left Earth, but they did not leave us. Some believe they hid their influence in plain sight, that the bloodlines of ancient rulers, the pharaohs, the kings, the elite were not just powerful families, but remnants of something older, something not entirely human, a legacy of the gods themselves. Could this be why the concept of divine right ruled for centuries? Why kings and emperors across civilizations claimed their authority came from the heavens? What if they weren't lying? What if the Anunnaki never fully abandoned this world, but instead left it in the hands of their chosen few? And if that's true, then we are not free. We never have been. Because the gods did not vanish. They simply stepped into the shadows, watching, waiting, controlling from behind the scenes. But here's the real question. Are they still in control? Or has humanity, after thousands of years, finally become something they can no longer contain? And if we have, will they return to stop us? They never left. They never stopped watching. For centuries, whispers of unseen rulers have echoed through history. Beings who do not sit on thrones, who do not wear crowns, yet control the fate of nations from the shadows. But what if these rulers are not human at all? Governments dismiss the idea of extraterrestrial interference. Scientists claim there is no evidence. And yet, year after year, leaks, declassified reports, and high-ranking officials continue to reveal a different story, a story of hidden surveillance, of encounters erased from history, of events so strange, so unexplainable, that even those in power cannot ignore them anymore. In 2017, the Pentagon declassified videos of unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs that defied the laws of physics. The objects moved at impossible speeds, changed direction with no propulsion, and vanished without a trace. Military pilots, trained to identify any known aircraft, admitted these were not human-made. But these sightings didn't start in modern times. They've been happening for thousands of years. In ancient cave paintings from Australia, over 10,000 years old, humanoid figures with large glowing eyes stand among primitive humans. In the medieval ages, paintings depict flying objects in the skies, sometimes shooting beams of light. And in the 1800s, long before aircraft were invented, newspapers reported mysterious flying ships appearing in the skies above Europe and America. What are we looking at? Advanced technology? Another civilization monitoring us? Or something even more terrifying? The return of those who were here before? The most chilling evidence comes from government insiders. In 2023, former U.S. intelligence officer David Grush testified before Congress, stating that the U.S. government has been recovering non-human biological remains from crash sites for decades. He claimed secret programs exist that study these beings, that reverse engineer their technology, and that world powers have been engaged in a silent, hidden arms race for control of what they left behind. But there's one problem. If governments are hiding this, who are they hiding it from? Why is this knowledge suppressed? Why is it dangerous for the public to know the truth? The answer may be more disturbing than anyone realizes. Because if these beings were the Anunnaki, if they are still watching us, then we are not free. We never have been. And the moment we begin to understand their presence, the moment we uncover what has been hidden for so long, they will reveal themselves. Not as visitors, not as allies, but as the true rulers of this world. They never needed to rule from the surface, because they have always ruled from the shadows. The idea of divine rulers is as old as civilization itself. Kings, pharaohs, emperors, almost every ancient leader claimed their authority came from the gods. But what if that wasn't just mythology? What if the elite bloodlines of the past were never meant to fade? There is a pattern in history that repeats itself with eerie precision. The same families, the same names, the same unbroken lines of power stretching back thousands of years. From the royal dynasties of ancient Mesopotamia to the emperors of Rome, from European monarchies to modern political and corporate empires, a bloodline that refuses to disappear. Researchers have long speculated about these hidden rulers' families that maintain control across generations, influencing governments, economies, and even wars. But what if their power isn't just inherited? What if their genetics are different? In ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were described as creating a ruling class to shepherd humanity. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim beings born from the union of gods and humans. In Egyptian culture, the pharaohs were seen as living gods with a direct connection to the divine. The concept of divine right has existed in almost every major civilization. But what if these weren't just symbolic titles? What if these rulers carried something in their blood that set them apart? Today, genetic studies reveal something unusual. Light families across different regions of the world share specific genetic markers that shouldn't be there. Anomalies in mitochondrial DNA, unique blood types that are rare among the general population, even physical traits, elongated skulls in royal tombs, heightened immune systems, and neurological differences in certain lineages. Coincidence? Or evidence of something unnatural? And here's where the story takes its darkest turn. If the Anunnaki never truly left, if their influence was embedded into humanity through these secret bloodlines, then we have never truly been free. What if the wars we see, the governments we trust, the leaders we follow, are all part of a controlled system? What if every revolution, every uprising, every shift in global power is not a threat to them, but a carefully orchestrated event designed to maintain control? Because the greatest trick the rulers ever pulled was convincing the world that we were ever in control. And if that's true, then the question is no longer, are they watching? The real question is, are we already too late to stop them? The world has forgotten, but the warnings were never erased. In the oldest texts ever written, there is a repeating message, a cycle, a countdown, a moment when everything resets. The Sumerians called it the return of the gods. The Mayans called it the end of the cycle. The Hopi called it the great purification, and the Bible calls it the second coming. Different names, different beliefs, but the same terrifying conclusion. The signs were left in stone, in myths, in the very foundations of our history. The Sumerians spoke of Nibiruth, a celestial body that, when it returns, brings destruction and change. The Egyptians warned of a time when the gods would once again walk among men. The Norse myths speak of Ragnarok, a war between the divine and mankind that resets civilization itself. And in nearly every prophecy, one thing remains constant: the world as we know it will not survive their return. But what if the countdown has already begun? Scientists have started noticing strange anomalies. The Earth's magnetic field is weakening at an unprecedented rate. The poles are shifting. Solar storms are becoming more frequent and more intense. Even NASA has admitted something is disrupting the planet's natural balance. And then there's Antarctica. Deep beneath the ice, satellites have detected massive heat signatures, something buried miles below, something ancient. Scientists claim it's geothermal activity. But what if it's not? What if something beneath the ice is waking up? And then there are the elite. Why are billionaires suddenly obsessed with underground bunkers? Why are the most powerful families on Earth buying remote land in New Zealand, Patagonia, and hidden locations across the world? What do they know that we don't? But here's the real question: what are they preparing for? The book of Revelation describes the Great Tribulation, a time when the heavens shake, the earth trembles, and the sky is filled with signs. The Hopi speak of the blue star Kachina, a celestial body that will mark the time of purification. The Mayans predicted the return of their gods at the end of the great cycle. What if these weren't just myths? What if these were coded warnings? A message hidden across civilizations, telling us exactly when they would return? If the gods do return, then the question is no longer when. The question is, have they already begun? The final warning has already been given. For thousands of years they left behind messages, warnings carved into stone, encoded in myths, hidden in the very fabric of time. But the truth was never meant for everyone. Only a few were chosen to understand. The rest were meant to remain blind. But now, something is changing. The skies are shifting. Strange signals are being detected from deep space frequencies so unnatural that even scientists are calling them artificial. The Earth's poles are moving at an accelerating rate. Magnetic disturbances are disrupting navigation systems, and deep beneath the oceans, military sonar is picking up unexplained movements, something massive, something rising from the depths. And then, there is the sun. NASA has warned that solar activity is reaching dangerous levels. But what they won't say is that ancient cultures predicted this long ago. The Hopi prophecies spoke of a time when the sun would turn against mankind. The Book of Enoch describes a celestial event where the sky will burn like fire. The Mayans, too, left behind warnings of a solar storm so powerful that it would reset civilization itself. And here's where it gets even more terrifying. What if these events aren't natural? What if they are part of the final phase before their return? For decades, the world's most powerful nations have been racing toward one goal: space domination. Secret military projects, advanced weapon systems, and an obsession with reaching Mars. But why? What are they preparing for? Why are governments so desperate to leave Earth? Unless they know something we don't. And then there are the secret bloodlines, the elite families who hold power over nations, corporations, and even history itself. They have spent centuries consolidating control, shaping society, and silencing those who ask the wrong questions. But there's one thing they can't control: the return. Because if the Anunnaki are coming back, then the balance of power is about to shift. The rulers of today may no longer be the rulers of tomorrow. The bloodlines that have hidden in the shadows may be forced into the light, and humanity will face a choice: bow to the gods who once ruled over them, or stand as equals. But what if this isn't a choice at all? What if the Anunnaki never saw us as equals? What if to them we were never more than an experiment, a workforce, a resource? If that's true, then their return is not salvation, it is control, it is reclamation. And those who think they are prepared have already lost. So now, the real question is humanity ready to face its creators, or will we be erased just as we were before? Because if the ancient prophecies were right, then time has already run out.